Avoidants operate on a predictable but hidden emotional timeline that determines when they're most receptive to reconnection versus when they're still too defended to engage meaningfully. This internal clock isn't based on calendar days or weeks, but on psychological phases that the avoidant must move through before they can access their authentic feelings about the relationship and their genuine desire for reconnection. The first phase, immediately following separation, is relief and validation, where the avoidant feels justified in their decision and experiences freedom from the anxiety that intimacy was creating. During this phase, which can last anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on how attached they had become, any attempt at contact will likely be met with coldness, defensiveness, or complete non-response. Their nervous system is still protecting them from the vulnerability they associate with you. The second phase involves gradual recognition of loss, where the avoidant begins noticing the absence of positive aspects from the relationship while the initial relief fades. They start missing your companionship, support, and understanding, though they may not yet admit this to themselves consciously. This phase typically begins 1 to 4 months after separation and represents the first crack in their defensive armor. The third phase is idealization and regret, where the avoidant's memory begins to romanticize the relationship, while minimizing the anxiety they felt during it. They remember the best moments with crystal clarity, while the overwhelming feelings that drove them away become distant memories. This phase, occurring roughly 3 to 8 months post-breakup, represents their highest receptivity to reconnection, because they're experiencing authentic longing without immediate anxiety. The fourth phase involves either permanent moving on or cycling back into pursuit, depending on whether they've found adequate replacement for what you provided, or whether they've realized the irreplaceable nature of your connection. Understanding which phase the avoidant is experiencing is crucial for timing any contact attempts effectively. The avoidant's internal clock is also influenced by external factors like stress levels, life changes, seasonal patterns, and their success in finding new connections. During periods of high stress or major life transitions, they often accelerate through these phases because they feel the absence of your support more acutely. Conversely, during periods of stability or new romantic excitement, the phases may extend as they feel less immediate need for your presence. Recognizing the signs when their defenses start cracking. Before breaking no contact, you must learn to read the subtle signs that indicate the avoidant's psychological defenses are beginning to soften and they're entering a phase where reconnection becomes possible. These signs are rarely obvious and require careful observation of their behavior patterns, energy shifts, and indirect communications. The first sign is increased visibility in your digital periphery. The avoidant begins viewing your social media stories more frequently, liking old photos they've seen before, or engaging with mutual friends' posts where you're mentioned or tagged. This increased digital presence suggests they're monitoring your life and emotional state, indicating growing interest in reconnecting. Changes in their posting patterns often signal internal shifts. They might begin sharing content about relationships, personal growth, or self-reflection that seems targeted toward your awareness. They may post nostalgic content about experiences you shared together or music that reminds them of your relationship. These indirect messages suggest they're processing the relationship and potentially preparing for contact. The avoidant may also begin appearing in your physical spaces more frequently. They start visiting places you frequent, attending events they know you'll be at, or positioning themselves in your social circles in ways that create opportunities for natural encounters. This behavior indicates they want to reconnect, but need the safety of accidental meeting rather than vulnerable outreach. Mutual friends often report changes in how the avoidant discusses you or the relationship. They may begin speaking about you more positively, expressing regret about how things ended, or asking subtle questions about your well-being and relationship status. These inquiries suggest they're evaluating whether reconciliation might be possible. The avoidant's overall energy and mood may also shift in ways that suggest internal processing. They might seem more introspective, less confident about their decision to end things, or generally more open to discussing relationships and emotional topics. These energy changes indicate they're moving through their psychological phases and approaching readiness for reconnection. Most importantly, you'll sense a shift in their energy toward you during any brief encounters. The coldness or defensiveness that characterized their early post-breakup interactions begins to soften. They may maintain more eye contact, engage in longer conversations, or simply seem more present and interested when you interact naturally. The precise moment when vulnerability meets opportunity. The optimal moment to break no contact occurs when the avoidant's internal vulnerability intersects with external circumstances that make reconnection feel natural rather than forced. This sweet spot typically happens when they're experiencing enough emotional openness to be receptive to your contact, combined with situational factors that provide a logical reason for reaching out that doesn't require you to expose yourself to rejection. The vulnerability component means they've moved beyond the defensive phase, where any contact feels threatening, and entered the regret phase, where they're genuinely missing aspects of your relationship. You'll sense this through the signs mentioned earlier: increased digital presence, softened energy during encounters, and general indication that their defenses have relaxed enough to allow emotional receptivity. The opportunity component involves finding a legitimate reason for contact that feels organic, rather than desperate or manipulative. This might be a significant life event that naturally calls for acknowledgement: their birthday, a job promotion they achieved, a family situation you're aware of, or a shared interest that provides natural conversation starter. The most effective opportunities are those that allow you to demonstrate your growth and evolution since the separation while providing value to them. Perhaps you've learned something that would help with a project they mentioned, encountered an opportunity that would benefit them professionally, or experienced something that reminds you of their interests in positive ways. The contact should feel like a natural expression of care from someone who has moved beyond neediness into genuine well-being. You're not reaching out because you need something from them, but because you have something valuable to offer, or because the situation naturally calls for human acknowledgement of their circumstances. Timing is also crucial within their psychological state. The ideal moment is when they're feeling some emotional openness, but before they've moved into a new relationship or convinced themselves completely that they're better off without you. This window typically occurs 2 to 6 months after separation, though it varies based on individual circumstances and the depth of your original connection. Strategic approach: how to break no contact without seeming desperate. When you do decide to break no contact, your approach must communicate that you're reaching out from a position of strength, growth, and genuine care, rather than from neediness, desperation, or hope for immediate reconciliation. The message, timing, and energy of your contact will determine whether it opens a door for renewed connection or closes it permanently. Your message should be brief, positive, and focused on them rather than on the relationship or your own feelings. Avoid lengthy explanations about why you're contacting them, detailed updates about your life since separation, or any mention of wanting to discuss the relationship. The goal is to open communication, not to process emotions or seek closure. The tone should be warm but not overly emotional, interested but not desperate, friendly but not assuming intimacy. You're communicating as someone who cares about their well-being but doesn't need their response for your own emotional stability. This balance is crucial because avoidance can sense desperation and neediness from subtle cues in your communication style. Focus the message content on something specific about them or their life, rather than on your own experience or feelings. Reference an achievement they've accomplished, ask about a situation they were dealing with, or share something that reminded you of their interests. This approach centers them rather than making the contact about your need for connection. Keep expectations minimal, and don't attach meaning to their response or lack thereof. The goal of breaking no contact isn't to immediately resume the relationship, but to open a channel for potential communication if they're receptive. Their response will give you information about their current emotional state and openness to renewed connection. If they respond positively, resist the urge to immediately escalate contact or bring up relationship topics. Follow their lead in terms of frequency and depth of communication. If they respond neutrally or negatively, respect their boundaries and don't attempt further contact unless circumstances naturally call for it again. The key is approaching contact as someone who has genuinely healed and grown, rather than someone who has been waiting for the right moment to resume pursuit. Your energy should communicate that you're doing well, that you're not dependent on their response for your happiness, and that you're simply extending human care to someone who was once important to you. Why timing determines everything. The psychology of avoidant receptivity. The success or failure of breaking no contact with an avoidant depends almost entirely on timing, because their receptivity to reconnection fluctuates dramatically based on their internal psychological state and external life circumstances. Contact attempted during the wrong phase can undo months of progress and permanently close doors that might have opened with better timing. During their defensive phases, any contact feels like pressure, invasion, or attempt to control their emotional state. The avoidance nervous system is still protecting them from the vulnerability they associate with you, making them interpret even friendly messages as threats to their newfound freedom and autonomy. Contact during these phases often reinforces their decision to end the relationship. However, during their vulnerable phases, the same message that would have been rejected weeks earlier can feel like a lifeline, a sign that they haven't been completely forgotten, or evidence that reconciliation might be possible. The avoidance emotional openness creates space for your message to be received with curiosity rather than defensiveness. External circumstances also dramatically affect their receptivity. During periods of stress, loneliness, or major life changes, avoidants often feel the absence of your support more acutely and become more open to reconnection. Conversely, during periods of excitement about new relationships or major life successes that boost their confidence, they may be less receptive to contact from previous partners. The avoidance relationship status significantly impacts their openness to your contact. If they're single and haven't found adequate replacement for what you provided, they're more likely to be receptive to your message. If they're dating someone new or have convinced themselves they're happier alone, your contact may be unwelcome regardless of its quality or timing. Understanding these timing factors allows you to maximize the chances that your contact will be received positively while minimizing the risk of further rejection or damage to potential future connection. Poor timing can make even the most thoughtful message feel inappropriate or unwelcome. The long-term strategy, building toward natural reconnection. Breaking no contact successfully requires thinking beyond the immediate goal of re-establishing communication toward the longer-term objective of creating conditions where natural, healthy reconnection becomes possible. This means focusing on becoming someone the avoidant would genuinely want to reconnect with, rather than simply finding the right moment to reach out to them. The most effective long-term strategy involves becoming so genuinely content and fulfilled in your own life that contact with the avoidant comes from abundance rather than scarcity. When you break no contact from a position of strength, confidence, and genuine well-being, it communicates that you're not reaching out because you need them, but because you have something valuable to offer, or because human kindness motivates acknowledgement of their circumstances. This approach requires intensive focus on your own growth, healing, and life development during the no contact period. You must use this time to address your own attachment patterns, build emotional security that doesn't depend on their behavior, create a life so satisfying that their presence becomes optional rather than necessary, and develop relationship skills that would make you an even better partner than before. The long-term strategy also involves maintaining perspective about what reconciliation would actually require. Even if your contact is well received and communication resumes, rebuilding a healthy relationship would require significant growth and change from both parties. Your time apart should have prepared you to recognize whether such growth is possible and whether the avoidant has developed the capacity for the kind of relationship you need. Remember that the goal of breaking no contact isn't necessarily to get them back. It's to create an opportunity for authentic communication that allows both of you to assess whether renewed relationship is possible and desirable. Sometimes the most successful contact is one that provides closure and confirms that moving on was the right decision for both parties. The avoidance secret clock isn't just about when they're ready to hear from you. It's about when both of you have grown enough that reconnection could create something healthier than what existed before. True timing considers not just their receptivity, but your own readiness for whatever outcome the contact might produce.